6 questions, 6 knives plunging into the buried truth beneath the flawless mask of a peaceful departure. But no departure is ever truly peaceful when the shadow of the hidden one lingers, hidden between missing pieces, between final breaths no one truly hears. Gene Hackman may be gone, but these 6 questions remain, demanding answers. From the dazzling lights of red carpet premieres to the post-Oscar parties that stretched into the early morning, Gene Hackman once had it all. The perks of an A-list star, a 2-time Oscar winner, one of the few to rise to the top without bowing to hidden forces. But behind that shining success, there was a Gene Hackman quietly closing doors, turning down Hollywood's glittering invitations and rejecting everything others deemed as glory. If you're intrigued by Gene Hackman's story and the hidden truths of Hollywood, hit like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with friends who'd enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next exciting and shocking stories. Now, let's dive into this captivating tale. By the late 1980s, at the height of his career with films like Mississippi Burning and Unforgiven, Gene Hackman started pulling away from the limelight, stepping back from major events, award ceremonies, and those iconic photos with colleagues over glasses of champagne. All of it had become excess, things Hackman no longer valued. Hollywood had no loyalty, no conscience, only an unquenchable thirst for profit. That sharp truth wasn't a rash statement, but the culmination of everything Hackman had seen, endured, and absorbed over decades of navigating the glitz and the cold calculations behind the scenes. Hackman wasn't meant to be an idol. He openly confessed that he never felt at ease stepping onto a stage to accept an award. The pats on the back, the fake smiles exchanged behind velvet curtains, the congratulatory handshakes. Each one felt like a relentless stab in the back. It all repulsed him. Hackman once shared a story with a close friend. After receiving his first Oscar for The French Connection, he tore the bow off the statue and tossed it straight into the trash can in the men's restroom of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. His frustration wasn't a brief outburst. It was the result of decades of dissatisfaction that had been building for years. From the moment Hackman entered the industry with a simple dream of pursuing his passion for acting, he once said, "I didn't come here to be famous. I came here to work." But he quickly realized that Hollywood wasn't there to support passion. It was a place that devoured any soul bold enough to dream of fairness or true art. For years, Hackman became a thorn in the side of Hollywood's hidden powers. He turned down lucrative contracts, declined invitations to extravagant fundraising events, and even flatly rejected an offer to join the Academy. Hollywood was a vast trap where the weak betrayed each other just to survive a few more seasons. So, Hackman took a nearly unheard-of route. He severed all ties with power, shut the door on the media, and withdrew to a quiet life in New Mexico with his wife, Betsy Arakawa, the only woman in his life who had never broken his trust in kindness. Even as Hackman attempted to cut all ties with Hollywood, he couldn't shake the persistent presence trailing him. Calls from famous directors, scripts sent to his home. Despite no one knowing his exact address, everything felt like lingering ghosts, reminding him that no one could truly escape Hollywood's grasp. The worst of it all, the thing that slowly ate away at the work Hackman had tried to protect for decades, were the secrets he was forced to keep. Secrets about backstage parties, the hidden deals between powerful producers and young stars willing to do anything to step onto the red carpet. Hackman knew it all, and he despised himself for staying silent. So, in his final days, when sharp pains in his chest forced him to face life's limits, Hackman broke the silence he had kept for nearly 50 years. What he revealed became the first horrifying piece of the Hollywood puzzle he had long witnessed. Unlike his tough, stoic persona on screen, Gene Hackman in real life was a smoldering fire, ready to ignite when something didn't sit right with him. That fire burned brightest on the set of The French Connection in 1971, where Hackman portrayed Jimmy Popeye Doyle, the role that solidified his legacy. But behind the film's raw, gritty realism lay a period of intense tension, one that set the lead actor against a powerful film crew, transforming the set into a silent battlefield. Director William Friedkin was a giant in the industry, but his approach to filmmaking was a nightmare for anyone who didn't bend to his will. Known for his brutal directing methods, Friedkin pushed actors to their physical and mental extremes to capture raw, authentic performances. But for Hackman, the real battle wasn't just with the unforgiving director, it was with an unseen force behind the camera, a presence more powerful than anything on set. From his first days on set, Hackman could sense eyes on him, not just from the production team, but from somewhere darker. There were private calls, subtle offers from men he'd never met. They didn't talk scripts, acting, or anything artistic. Instead, they presented conditions, terms for invisible support, the kind that could make or break a career. Later, Hackman would refer to it as the dirty deal happening behind the scenes. During a late-night shoot, with the entire crew exhausted, Hackman stepped backstage to catch his breath in a dimly lit corner behind the studio where the streetlights cast an eerie glow. That's when he overheard it. A brief, hushed conversation between the producer and an unfamiliar man. The whispers mixed with cigarette smoke, but Hackman caught enough to understand. His role, the upcoming awards, even the trajectory of his career. It had all been planned long before. "We need a fresh face, but one we can control." The voice was so cold, it sent chills down Hackman's spine. By morning, his fury had reached its breaking point. He confronted Friedkin and the producer directly, but all he received were weak smiles and defiant stares. That was the moment Hackman understood. In this game, actors weren't artists. They were pawns. The scenes he filmed weren't just for the audience. They were tools, pieces in a much larger scheme unfolding behind the curtain. From that moment on, Hackman refused all private meetings with producers and avoided exclusive parties where secret deals were masked as casual exchanges. He understood that stepping through those doors meant paying a price, not just with his career, but with his soul. Few knew that Hackman was offered leading roles in at least 3 blockbuster films of the 1970s, all of which went on to win Oscars. He turned them all down. Not because of the scripts, but because each offer came with a list of non-artistic conditions. Private dinners with industry power players, unsigned contracts filled with vague clauses about promotional opportunities, and worst of all, demands that could never be put in writing. Demands so infuriating that Hackman reportedly tore a script apart the moment he finished reading it. There was a rumor in the industry, one Hackman never confirmed but that had circulated for years, that he had witnessed a secret deal to rig the Oscars. A powerful producer negotiating quietly with an Academy media representative. Not about the quality of a film, but about a post-award publicity package that would ensure the win had nothing to do with merit. From that point forward, Hackman lost faith in the Oscar race. To him, the golden statue wasn't a symbol of artistic achievement. It was a prize won behind closed doors. And as rumors spread throughout the studio that year, Hackman realized he no longer fit in there. In the quiet seaside room in Santa Fe, where Gene Hackman spent his final years escaping the chaos of the world, an old phone rang through the silence of the night. On the other end was a familiar voice, his closest friend for decades, the only person Hackman still trusted with the secrets he had buried for years. But this time, Hackman wasn't reaching out to relive the past. The stories he called to reveal. Hackman's voice was rough, each word cutting through the silence like a sharp blade. He began with a sentence as chilling as the night air seeping through a cracked window. "We sold our souls for fame, and I can't die carrying this burden." Outside, the New Mexico sky was pitch black, but the true darkness filled the room where Hackman sat. No lights, unlike usual. The whiskey on the table contained nothing but the memories he'd spent over 50 years trying to bury. Now they surged forth, unstoppable. Hackman recalled it slowly, each word feeling like a stone weighing down his chest. He spoke of a night in 1974 inside a Beverly Hills mansion, not just a gathering of A-list stars, but a room packed with powerful figures from media, production, and politics. It wasn't just a party. It was the night Hackman was first welcomed into the inner circle, a group of seasoned actors revered by Hollywood and the press. Yet behind the scenes, they kept secrets that could never be revealed. According to Hackman, the inner circle wasn't some clandestine group with elaborate rituals or blood oaths. The vow was silence. A pact among those who had witnessed too much, who knew too much about the dark secrets of the film capital. They were like shipwreck survivors, holding the truth about the disaster, but bound to silence if they wanted to preserve their lives and their careers. The greatest secret Hackman carried throughout his life, the one that ate away at his soul with each passing day, was the cover-up of Hollywood's most horrific crime, a child exploitation ring involving famous filmmakers, celebrated actors, and the shadowy figures who controlled the awards, the media, and the entire industry. In 1975, Hackman and a few familiar faces, once prominent actors who had faded from the spotlight, were invited to a private party. They thought it was just another chance to network with the powerful. But what unfolded behind those doors would haunt Hackman for the rest of his life. Beyond the velvet curtain, inside an extravagant room, was a scene he could never erase from his mind. Children, too young to understand what was happening, used as entertainment for men who called themselves moguls. The laughter, the applause, the firm handshakes after each exchange. Hackman absorbed it all, his eyes capturing every detail, his heart turning cold like a sheet of black ice. The next day, Hackman and a few fellow actors found themselves thrown into a nightmare they never expected. They were called into a sealed room and given two choices: sign a non-disclosure agreement in exchange for roles, fame, and protection, or speak out and watch their careers and possibly their lives crumble away. Hackman signed, not for fame, but because he knew that alone he couldn't battle the colossal machine fueled by money and power. It wasn't just a confession, it was the tolling of a bell, swinging open the gates of hell, where Hollywood's darkest secrets lay in wait to be exposed. The small wooden house in Santa Fe, where Gene Hackman spent his final years, soon became a focal point after news of his passing spread. But not because of curious locals or tabloid reporters. A different group arrived first, people who never ventured into the light. They didn't bring flowers, they didn't light candles, they came for the tapes. Those tapes had long been a whispered legend in private conversations among veteran actors. Those who knew Hackman understood his habit of recording, not for blackmail or as a weapon, but simply to keep a record in case the truth ever needed to be revealed. Hackman called them his lifeline tapes, the only connection between him and his conscience. According to an anonymous insider, Hackman began this secret practice in the late 1980s, silently recording phone calls with producers, negotiations over roles, veiled threats against young actors who refused to comply, and even off-the-record conversations among Hollywood's power players. He recorded everything. Each tape was a piece of a puzzle in what Hackman referred to as the ugliest mosaic of power I've ever seen. Those tapes didn't just hold scattered voices. They were living proof of a system that had been running for decades. A system where prestigious awards weren't always given for talent, where faces disappeared from the screen for simply saying no, and where child actors were taught silence before they even knew the alphabet. Hackman once told a friend, "If you heard what I've heard, you'd never watch another Oscar night again." Now that Hackman was gone, so were the tapes. At the family's request, the Santa Fe police conducted a thorough search of the house, checking secret drawers, hidden compartments in bookshelves, even scanning every floor tile. No tapes, no cases. They had disappeared without a trace. Hackman's family, particularly his cousin who lived next door during his final years, confirmed seeing old tape reels neatly stacked inside a worn leather suitcase. Hackman never explained them. He only gave one instruction. If anything happened, they were not to be opened. Instead, they were to contact a single name, a former friend who had never appeared in any public photographs. When the police opened Hackman's storage room, the suitcase was gone, without a trace, not even a single note left behind. Someone had taken it. But the more terrifying question was, had Hackman managed to copy the tapes? And if so, where were they now? In the hands of an old colleague still on the same side? Locked away in the safe of a mysterious attorney in New York? Or had they already reached a newsroom where journalists were sitting on a ticking time bomb, just waiting for the right moment to detonate? Some Hollywood insiders revealed that Hackman wasn't the only one aware of the recordings. Certain directors, screenwriters, and even young actors who had been caught in shady dealings also knew about them, but no one dared to speak of them, because they understood that merely mentioning the missing tapes was like signing their own death sentence. If you find Gene Hackman's story worth reflecting on, leave a comment with the number 1. If not, leave a comment with the number 0. Now let's dive into more thought-provoking stories about Gene Hackman. As the lights dimmed over the empty streets of Santa Fe, only questions lingered in the darkness. What fragments of truth had Hackman left behind, and who or what force had the power to decide whether those secrets would ever be revealed? Hollywood remained silent, as if nothing had ever happened. But those who knew Hackman understood. The tapes weren't lost. They were simply in hiding, waiting for a hand brave enough to pull back the curtain of truth. From the day he walked off his final film set, Gene Hackman chose a path few Hollywood legends ever dared to take. A path of complete isolation and solitude. Santa Fe, New Mexico, with its arid hills and blood-red sunsets, became his ultimate refuge. A humble wooden house. No towering gates, no walls, no guards. Only the wind slicing through the cracks, as if every sound conspired with the haunting silence. Hackman tried to move on, but even there, Hollywood never truly let him go. You can leave Hollywood, but Hollywood will never leave you alone, he once said during a private meeting with a few old friends in 2005, a statement that would linger like a haunting curse. One of those present remembered Hackman speaking with a calm demeanor, but beneath it all, there was a smoldering fear. The fear of a man who had seen too much, known too much, and carried secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. In his early years in New Mexico, Hackman kept sporadic contact with old friends, former colleagues, those who had once stood on the same side, defending what they called the artistic conscience. But over time, everything faded. The phone stopped ringing, handwritten letters went unanswered, and Hackman, in some way, had pushed himself into complete isolation. He once joked to his cousin, "If one day I disappear, no one will know." But it wasn't just a joke, it was a premonition. It was this very cousin who, after Hackman's death, began experiencing strange occurrences for years. Mysterious cars parked at a distance, sometimes speeding off into the night with no one in sight. Eerie late-night calls with only the sound of faint breathing before abruptly hanging up. Nameless letters containing only a few handwritten words. "We see you." Hackman never officially admitted he was being watched, but his cousin confirmed that he knew it well enough to always keep 2 suitcases in the house, one filled with personal belongings and the other with documents no one had ever seen. Hackman lived like an exile in his own home, always prepared to leave everything behind and vanish if necessary. Why? Because of what he knew and what he carried with him in his final years. He rejected every invitation to return, not for an honorary Oscar, not for a Lifetime Achievement Award, not for anniversary tributes. Partly because he despised Hollywood's hypocrisy, but mostly because he knew that the moment he stepped beyond the safe confines of Santa Fe, the old hands wouldn't hesitate to reach out and squeeze the last breath from his throat. Some called Hackman paranoid, but those who sat with him in that wooden house heard the disjointed fragments, the late-night parties in Beverly Hills, the deals made behind closed doors, the young stars who never got their chance to shine. They knew Hackman wasn't delusional. He was simply one of the few who had lived long enough to tell the story. But no one knows if those stories ever escaped Hackman's lips in time, or if they followed him into the abyss of eternal silence. Gene Hackman's final days were far from the peaceful twilight of a legendary figure enjoying his last years. Instead, they were suffocatingly tense, as if his final breaths were being choked away, each faint glimmer of daylight swallowed by the shadows of memories he could never erase. About 3 weeks before his death, his cousin noticed something unusual. Hackman, who had severed most ties with Hollywood long ago, was suddenly making calls. Not to younger colleagues, not to journalists who had once sought him out, but to a few old faces. Faces that belonged to a secret circle of silence, a pact Hackman had broken years ago. Once united as allies, they have since disappeared, not just from memory, but from existence itself. What's even more chilling is the bizarre manner of their deaths. Midnight car wrecks, fatal tumbles down their own staircases, or sudden, unexplained fatalities in their opulent Beverly Hills estates. The deaths appeared random, yet Hackman never bought into the idea of accidents in a world where men bartered their souls for fame. "I have no one left to talk to," he murmured one night, standing by his office window, his hand shaking as he clutched the old landline phone. Unanswered calls. Voicemails left to echo in emptiness. Voices once familiar, now silenced forever. In the desk drawer of Hackman's office after his death lay a collection of jumbled notes, scrawled in shaky, uneven handwriting. There was no start, no finish, just disjointed fragments of an unfinished puzzle scribbled onto crumpled paper. Yet one line stood out. The same faces, the same hands, the same silence. This phrase echoed like a chilling refrain, repeated across several notes, as though Hackman had desperately tried to leave a message for anyone daring enough to read and brave enough to comprehend. The same faces, the familiar faces, the ones that smiled beside him on the red carpet, and the ones that crushed the careers and souls of those who dared to speak. The same hands, the hands that congratulated him when he won awards, and the same hands that signed the orders to silence inconvenient witnesses. The same silence, the silence that has endured for over 50 years, concealing Hollywood's most sinister secrets. When Gene Hackman's death was officially announced, it came with a neat and tidy cause, natural causes, a clean conclusion, leaving no room for curiosity to roam. But for those who understood the world Hackman had escaped, natural had never been a reality. Was it truly the end, or Hollywood's final warning to those who dared defy the rules? An old friend, one of the few survivors, spoke to the press after Hackman's funeral. Gene knew the rules. He knew them better than anyone. And he knew exactly what happens when you forget who makes them. Gene Hackman's story didn't end with a quiet grave in Santa Fe. It ended with the sharp slam of an office door. The first officer stepped into the wooden house, where a silent landline sat by the window, and beneath a drawer lay the final note. "I never wanted to survive." Hackman closed his eyes, but his last words rang out, not as a peaceful farewell, but as a scream ripping through the glittering mask Hollywood used to conceal its rotting conscience. That secret. Who dares to hear it all? Those words didn't come solely from a man on the edge of death, but from the voice of a tormented conscience. He had lived a life of glory, yet one shadowed by regret and sorrow. He had devoted his entire being to his art, but the price was paid in wounds and loss. In his final moments, he could no longer stay silent. He had to speak the truth, even if it had the power to shatter the world. Those left behind, will they dare face it? Will they have the courage to hear it through? Or will they turn a blind eye, cover their ears, and keep living in illusion and lies? Gene Hackman was gone, but his words lingered. A warning, a challenge, and perhaps the key that would shape the future of an entire industry. If the story of Gene Hackman and Hollywood's dark secrets surprised you, make sure to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with friends who might find it intriguing. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.